Okay.
You may go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So now we have 55 countries representing 1.2 billion people in this very large continent. How does that help Africa in terms of its global relationships with the European Union, with the United States, and with China? Will this give greater power to Africa to negotiate for development? And will this cause problems now that Africa is a new giant on the international scene?
No, this is definitely something very positive for the continent. You know, it's really sad when everybody talks about globalization. How do you globalize and then turn around and say, Togo, you're part of the world, and Togo, you are free to negotiate and compete as an equal partner where there's parity? Of course, there isn't. There really isn't. So the world is talking about globalization, and Africa was defeated before the game even begins. This equalizes the playing field. Africa can now be a player on the world stage. Africa can be an active participant in this process of globalization. So yes, this CFTA equalizes the playing field for the Africans, and yes, CFTA introduces the much needed parity for Africa to be a dominant player and an active player and equal player on the world stage.
Now you have certain countries in Africa that are much larger economies, such as Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia is growing its economy. Will these countries have a greater advantage, or will there be an equalization from all the African countries, even the small ones that have weaker economies?
Well, actually, what you'll find is we're going to end up being like the United States. You know, you got smaller states, you got bigger states. But what it does is it allows the Africans to be able to find opportunities where opportunities are there for them. As someone in this country who cannot find a job in Maryland, maybe their opportunity is in California. The ability to be able to do so is that in its own liberating and opens a lot more opportunities for the Africans rather than being restricted to your own little country on the continent. It is just advantages every which way you look at it. It is the way it should have been from the beginning. What we were left with as the 55 African countries is left in a position of weakness. This is something that has taken us many years to ratify, but finally it has been ratified. It is a much needed move on the part of the African continent, and it is a move that is gigantic. It leaves us in a position where we are an amazingly major power and the fastest and the biggest economy in the world, and no country comes even close when we speak with one voice as Africa, the continent.
Recently, over the last, let's say, 10, maybe 15 years, China has been a major country investing in infrastructure and building very significant infrastructure for the first time in the history of Africa, or at least since colonialism, railroads are being built. The United States has remained on the sidelines, or to a much more diminutive state in terms of its relationship to Africa. How do you think this free trade agreement can affect the United States and other Western countries that have been more shy and reserved in their commitment to develop Africa?
Well, all I can say is I have two mandates, like I said earlier. The main one is to promote Africa in the Americas, and the second one is to galvanize the African diaspora to participate in the development of Africa. When it comes to promoting Africa in the Americas, it is my priority, and it is my belief that a relationship between Africa and the United States is about as complete as any relationship can be. I look at Africa and the United States as actually being married. Everything that the United States needs can be found in Africa, and everything Africa needs can be found in the United States. It is really precisely for that reason that I am on a mission to see to it that America remains the #1 preferred trading partner for the Africans. And for that to happen, the misconceptions, the misunderstandings that exist between the Americans and the Africans have got to be addressed head on. First, the Americans must realize that the sleeping giant, which is Africa, is rising, and that this is a new game, and they can no longer continue to play a new game with the same old raggedy rules. It is a new game. And to the Africans, I say, you need to realize that you are just as smart, just as intelligent, and just as much a strong player on the world stage, and that you need to stop feeling inferior and rise up, realize that you as an African are as good as anybody else. Our friends, the Caucasians, have got to get off their high horses, and all I ask is that when you go to Africa, you pack three things: humility, honor, and respect for the Africans. If you do that, as an American going to Africa to invest, to do business, you will have an amazing time. Africa will receive you with open arms. So yes, better understanding between the Africans and the Americans, and realizing that we are equal. And when we meet each other in the middle, where we treat each other as equals, that is when the truly needed meaningful conversations can take place. And that is where we can begin to have the relationship that we need. And that is the place where this marriage can give not only many children, but many beautiful children.
Finally, let's look into the future. We have the African AU Agenda for 2063, which is a few decades off. We have the projections that by 2050, there's going to be almost 2.5 billion Africans on the entire continent. And now we have the free trade agreement. So how do you see this free trade agreement as complementing the very ambitious plans, good plans, but ambitious plans of the African Union Agenda of 2063, and dealing with the problems that Africa's going to face of doubling its population, numerous, maybe 1 billion or more youth will be on the African continent. So your vision of this new breakthrough in agreements and negotiations will affect, how do you see that will affect the next 30, 40 years of what Africa's going to face?
Actually, you have to realize that the bulk of the population in Africa are young people. They are the youth. Right. That's the biggest advantage. And
Correct.
That's the biggest advantage we have compared to the rest of the world. So the workforce we have, the capacity, mental capacity we have, talent is equally distributed throughout the world. And the only disadvantage that the African youth have is having the right exposure. So as we improve our economic circumstances, you also need to realize that our youth are going to step in, the talent that exists within each and every one of us, innovations that must be had, it's all going to come out of Africa. So yes, the population of the youth that we have, it is a huge advantage for Africa, and it is actually the singularly one element that's going to make Africa the go-to place for the rest of the world, because we have the manpower.
And you see this free trade agreement will facilitate the movement, training, education, and job development
with no doubt.
The youth that are going to be populating the continent.
With no doubt at all. That is our one biggest asset. All we need to do at this time is properly manage them and making sure that the right conditions are created. And I can honestly tell you that with the leadership that we have at the African Union today, they are acutely aware of what is needed and the importance of investing in our youth. So they are galvanizing every effort, everything that we can possibly do to see to it that this demographic dividend, we benefit from it in the manner that we should. And it is a priority for the African Union.
Well, on that very optimistic note, Ambassador, I thank you very much for this interview, and we hope that the word goes out wide, loud and clear throughout the United States and Africa on what the future for Africa is. Thank you very much.
Allow me to tell the Americans that the African sleeping giant is rising. If I can leave you with anything that you must remember, that it is a new game. Africa is on the move, and be part of it.
Thank you very much, Madame.
Thank you.
Okay.